Greetings and welcome back to Daily Driver with myself, Bass Driver, here at Paine's Games, where if you enjoy the content, then I invite you to leave a like and comment and share this with your friends, and most importantly hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to ensure you get notifications of my latest content. So this previous weekend, we as a family had the great pleasure of finally playing through Astro's Playroom on the PlayStation 5 Slim, and it got me to thinking about the slight reshuffle in leadership at PlayStation and idealising over what I would do if I were in Hideaki Nishino's shoes right now. First up though, I wanted to give a few impressions of the hardware itself in 2025, now that we're 5 years into the life cycle, seeing 2 midlife updates in the exorbitantly priced PlayStation 5 Pro and the equally still far overpriced PlayStation 5 Slim models. Now why do I say this? Well, straight out of the box, the Slim model feels like it's made from the cheapest plastic available in the usual perfect gloss for attracting the maximum amount of dust out of your atmosphere. This reminded me very strongly of my PS3 unboxing, wherein I had managed to scratch the glossy frontage of my launch model PS2 back compact console with the lightest brush of a ring whilst removing the packaging. That was one of 2 lessons learnt that day, the second being that I was never going to buy a launch model console at launch again. A decision only compounded by eventual hardware failure and other factors over that PS3's lifespan. But once out of the box safely, the good lady driver's immediate reaction to the PS5 was to compare it to our standing rotary fan, which is located right next to the PS5, as the plastic is exactly the same. For context, the fan cost maybe £25 at the most from a B&M bargain store. For consoles that command hundreds of pounds at launch, indeed the Pro model currently retails at a whopping £659 for a mid-gen refresh, a price that is almost a one-to-one reflection of the PlayStation 3's original launch price. For that sort of money, I would expect the finish to be less, well, resemblant of that from a fan from a bargain shop, honestly. For a Slim, the size is still ridiculous, with the shape not lending itself to stacking or storing in any way, and it's reflective of the PS3's curved top, forcing you to allow the console to dominate your hi-fi stack or TV stand. The stands it comes with are laughable, and I wouldn't advise anyone uses these packing tags to hold the console horizontally. Luckily for us, we can purchase an additional vertical stand for $25 or thereabouts, equally made from the cheapest possible materials, with absolutely no lux to be felt from such a decadent purchase. The disk drive still looks like a vicious duma, spoiling the lines of a design that clearly never gave disk drives a second thought in the initial penning, and the V-wings still provoke feelings of existential dread as one imagines catching one of them and snapping the cheap plastic, or worse, having said wings feed accidental spillage from, say, a stray child or pet straight through the fan grills. On a positive note, the 4 USBs, HDMI and network ports are well positioned and easily accessible. However, the cheap feel continues into the pack-in controller, which for some reason feels as though it uses a slightly thinner plastic, with the D-pad and face buttons bearing a bit of a rattle in their mounts. Things that I didn't notice with my Galactic Purple controller incidentally, which doesn't bear these same issues, to my feeling. Again, this takes me back to the PS3's 6-axis launch model controllers, which were made of such a thin plastic that one could see through them when holding them up to the light. That said, from the minute of taking it out of the box, the DualSense gives off supreme vibes of the original silver boomerang controller shown off with the PS3 prior to launch, which honestly, I rather like. The haptic functions in the DualSense are probably the biggest selling point for the system as a whole in my personal opinion. Well, that and perhaps some of that stable 1080p HD gaming we were all promised back when PS3 launched. Yes, I know that the system is supposed to be 4K capable, possibly 8K in some cases like Gran Turismo 7 I believe, and there's the whole ray tracing and PSSR and blah blah, fake frames, glossy reflections, glowing crevices, yada yada. And the problem I find with these claims is, number one, they've taken the 8K off of the box because that just wasn't actually happening across the board, ever. And 2, I find that when trying to achieve these ever higher resolutions and photorealistic environments, the gameplay tends to suffer exponentially, frame rates and frame timing usually being the first to take the hit. Which leads conveniently into the pack-in game, Astro's Playroom. Now, as soon as I played the Playroom way back on a PS4 dev kit, I said that PlayStation needed to make this adorable little guy their primary mascot like yesterday. Naturally, everyone else in that particular office laughed. Luckily for us all, and perhaps most of all PlayStation, this did turn out to be the no-brainer many of us out here knew it would be. In fact, it was quite confusing that the PS4 led with knack, rather than following up with an Astrobot back then. Still, here he finally is in a much more fleshed out pack-in title that, though small in scope, balances perfectly elements of showcasing what the console has to offer, whilst actually being a fun and compelling experience with absolutely beautiful graphics, great tactile feedback through the controller, and I must give absolutely top marks to the music and audio programming. This little pack-in packs one hell of a punch. Indeed, we slammed through it in 5 hours and are collecting the remaining puzzle pieces, artifacts and the such while we await the arrival of Astrobot. Yep, it was such a compelling pack-in that we all knew we had to experience the next adventures of Astro & Co. Now, for context, this is Mini Driver's first experience of a new, out-of-the-box current generation console, and his anticipation for Astrobot as a character and title has been huge since the console first launched, having seen folks like Zack Scott Games and such playing it. And you know what? The excitement was absolutely justified. I can't quite relay the joy we've had as a family sitting around the TV, passing the pack and controller around, sharing the absolute pleasure that is Astro's Playroom. See, I never had this particular sort of moment in my childhood, as my parents were vehemently against consoles and video games as a whole, so it really hit hard seeing the sheer joy on Mini Driver's face and sharing the whole experience together as a family. I could finally relate to anyone who, of a Christmas over the last 3.5 decades, came down to find a NES, Master System, SNES, Mega Drive, N64, PlayStation, or whatever under the tree, and then spent the next week hammering through the pack-ins around the living room TV with their siblings and partners and parents. That visceral feeling right there, that's what gaming's about. That's what drove me to get into the video game industry in the first place, really. Fundamentally, I looked at the back of the Nintendo Entertainment System's packaging. I looked at that family all huddled round a 16-inch CRT or whatever, having fun together, building bonds together and over time growing together over different types of games, often going on to play things like Halo or Half-Life or Doom or whatever together as they age to each appropriate point. So, with all this praise and based upon the first impressions as a consumer, would I suggest rushing out and jumping in on a PlayStation 5 at this stage, 5 years in, if you haven't already? Well, I'm not entirely sure I can. I'm just not convinced by the value prospect for a wider audience when it comes to the PlayStation 5 right now. The price is still far too high a point of entry for a product built from frankly fairly cheap materials, with a footprint the size of Andre the Giant, bearing holdover features that either got dropped or were restricted by time limitations on PlayStation 4. But perhaps most egregiously, and again in a stark reflection of the PlayStation 3's rocky life cycle, is the issue of content. And I shall go into that in more detail in tomorrow's Daily Driver, wherein I shall expound on my idealistic checklist of things I would do from 9 AM on April 1st in Hideaki Nishino's shoes to try and right the ship over at PlayStation in 2025 and beyond. So please do check in again tomorrow for that. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this content, and if you did, please do leave a like and comment. If not, leave a dislike. Feel free to share on social media, and most of all, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to be informed of my next video. This has been Bass Driver from Paine's Games. Thanks again for listening. Take care out there, and I'll catch you in the next one.